Freedom built the modern world, even its critics, and capitalism is evil. Said from a $1,000 smartphone, filmed on a $1 billion app, running on $1 trillion infrastructure, paid for by ad revenue from private companies competing for your attention. You can hate capitalism all you want, but you can't escape it because it built the world you live in. Now, of course, you can escape. You can go to North Korea, right? But I don't see people queuing up to do that often. So let's talk about why you're on YouTube or TikTok and what that says about the real ethics of capitalism. Before we start, I'm giving away my $197 Wealth Builders Toolkit free for a limited period. It's the exact system I use to manage my money and plan investments. So grab it while it's still free, link in the description, and let's dive straight in. Think about this for a second. Every time someone rants about capitalism on social media, they're using the most capitalist tool ever invented. TikTok, YouTube, IG or Instagram, Facebook, you name it. All private companies built on free enterprise, free exchange, and profit. No government forced them to innovate. No committee voted them into existence. They were created because someone had an idea and the freedom to pursue that very idea. That's called capitalism. It's not greed, it's human creativity unleashed. Here's the paradox that no one wants to admit. Capitalism, it's the only system that lets you criticize it profitably. So you can post anti-capitalist content, gain followers, monetize your outrage, and sell merch, all within the capitalist marketplace. It's quite ironic, really. Try doing that in North Korea. Try doing that in Cuba. In a free market, even your protest is a product of freedom. The system you're raging against is the only one that allows your rage to go viral. So having that, that thought, even Voltaire, before the French Revolution, during the French Revolution, right, his idea in France was that he will disagree with you vehemently, but he will basically defend your right to speak to his death, right? If he will die for your right to speak, even though he disagrees with you. Completely different, unfortunately, completely different result after the revolution, different thinkers versus the American Revolution that went in kind of a little better direction. Now, when you think about the truth of capitalism, like capitalism doesn't care what you believe. So you're free to believe whatever you want. I mean, that's kind of liberal democracy in a sense. The voting in capitalism is the dollar bill, right? The more you give or the currency you give, you're paying, you're voting. You want that t-shirt, you want that mug, you want that merch, whatever it is. You are voting with your wallet. You are giving money. You're transacting by that. If you like something more, you give it more. If you like something less, you give it less. It doesn't ask your party. It doesn't ask your religion. It doesn't ask your politics. You're not getting from power. You're not getting stuff like that in terms of what happens under communism, right? Where basically you get more, like some are more equal because the people that are running the system, they're deserving of more because they're such hard workers, so they get nicer palaces and nicer places to stay, whereas everyone else is just mired, in abject poverty. And often the thought is, well, that's not real communism. And if I was running real communism, usually it's quite a naive thought because it doesn't give true to reality in the sense of, you think of Machiavelli's The Prince, right? It's like the person who is not necessarily the best, not angels that are actually running countries, right? So we think about that sometimes too naively. We're almost like in the kind of Sir Thomas More's utopia idea. But capitalism, what it does is it just asks, did you create something valuable? That's it. It doesn't matter your religion. It doesn't matter your politics. It doesn't matter your party. It allows you the freedom as long as you create something valuable. And that's why capitalism is actually the most tolerant system ever devised. Try tolerance under other systems. They just don't have it. A communist can sell anti-capitalist books on Amazon. A social influencer can cash sponsorship checks from capitalist brands. This was almost the same in Voltaire, that like light and truth, but light is the greatest disinfectant. That if you shine light, if you let different voices speak, the voices that have the more idiotic ideas will necessarily be, people will understand that after a while. I think you've got to trust in the ability for people to understand. The trust was not in the German Reich, because before that there was the closure, there was the seizure of the press. There was not open press. It was closed down, there were book burnings, etc. And there was basically kind of stamping out the Republic. The Weimar Republic was stamped out under the boot of the Nazi Party, for instance. Right? So there wasn't freedom of expression. There wasn't freedom of newspaper under that system, contrary to what you had then. It was a fascist system. And thankfully we learned the problems of fascism under the Italian fascist state, under Benedetto Mussolini, under the German fascist state, under Adolf Hitler, etc. We learned fascism bad. Didn't quite learn the other side of things, because big things bad, essentially. So we think about communism too. Again, capitalism, it doesn't discriminate. It rewards contribution. That's not exploitation. That's opportunity. Nobody is forcing you to make these trades. Nobody is forcing you to work. Yes, if you don't work, you don't get paid. Yes, if you don't. But if you do, if you get up and you do some attempt, you'll get more. And the more you work and the more valuable you create, the more you can actually get on in life. And that's the same thing. If we brought everyone to the equal playing field and we reduced all wealth to zero, it would start to expand. Differences would start to expand. Those that wanted to work would start working, start performing and producing, and you would have the same inequalities all over again, because we're not born with equal talent. We're not born with equal propensities for hard work. Some of us are going to be fantastic at music, and we don't usually criticize this. Look, I have no skill whatsoever in being an artist. Some people are going to be fantastic violinists, and yet we don't seem to have that moral conundrum or problem with people that are fantastic dancers or fantastic violinists. But it's the same thing. It's a skill that they possessed, that they were totally unequal, and they can create beautiful melodies. But what the kind of idea of equalism, or I guess the idea of equity is, let's bring everyone back. So let's break their fingers so that everybody else is the same, or let's try to make everyone equal. But we appreciate those that are fantastically gifted in the arts. And likewise, we should appreciate those that are just, for whatever reason, they're more conscientious, they're hardworking, maybe they're a bit lower in neuroticism to a certain extent, or lower in agreeableness, but they're going to basically do well in life because they're very hardworking. They're just, and they're going to get rewarded for it. And that's what lifts us out of the poverty, what lifts societies out of poverty. Because here's what's really happening under the surface. Every like, every share, every purchase is a moral act of choice. You choose what to watch. It's like we're watching this video, what to buy, the clothes you're wearing, what to support. In capitalism, no one controls that choice. And that freedom, that power to choose, is morally profound, or is profoundly moral, because morality without freedom is meaningless. If virtue cannot be chosen, it isn't virtue. That's what separates capitalism from every other coercive system in history. It doesn't force goodness, it invites it. It is voluntary. It lets you rise or fall by your integrity, because you're not going to get repeated transactions without reputation. Reputation matters, and you're not going to keep pulling wool over eyes. Happened with Bernie Madoff. After a while, Bernie Madoff fell. The more light we shine. It also helps you rise or fall by your creativity, the more value you can add. Service, those that you're helping, etc. If you can provide service, because money is just frozen labor value in a sense. Marx was right, there are some problems with it, but freedom tests character, and that's the real ethics of capitalism. Now, people say, we just need a fairer system. Okay, but fair by whose definition? Who gets to choose what's enough? Who decides that? Is it going to be the commissar? Is it going to be the party bureaucrat? Is there going to be a dictator? Who gets what? So when you have a centrally planned system, other people are choosing, and also who deserves more? Other people are basically spending other people's money to benefit other people. Well, they don't know what other people want. I don't know what a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a husband or a wife or an aunt and uncle, I don't truly know exactly what they want. So me spending on them is going to be second best to just giving them money and they can spend exactly how they like. But also, if I'm not spending my money, then I'm less concerned about being efficient, about trying to like get a good cost, get a good deal, not spend too much money, not waste money, spend frivolously, wasting, right, money, because it's not my money, so who cares, right? I can just spend it. So that's the problem, right? You're trying to satiate other people's desires who you don't know, and you don't know their desires, using other people's money, so you're not going to spend it as efficiently, as effectively. Whereas if you were at least spending your own money, that's like philanthropy. Like maybe you don't know their desires truly, but at least you're spending your own money. It's a little bit better. It's not first best, but it's a little better. On the other hand, if you were spending other people's money, maybe like you got bank of dad, bank of mom, etc., or you're getting given a handout, but you're spending it on what you like yourself. That's still a little bit better than other people spending others' money on you, because at least now you get to buy the color you want, to buy the prize you want, buy the product you want, etc. But the best is when you spend your money on what you want. That is not central planning. That is complete decentralization, because you had to work to earn the money. You got the money from somehow. Either you worked or you worked in the past, or there was frozen labor. At some point, someone worked, got the money, and it could be, your forefathers, etc., that worked. But if you're spending money, then you're going to spend it most effectively, and you're going to spend it on what you like to satiate your desires. So it'll be spent to maximize your enjoyment, but also you're doing it effectively. So it's the complete opposite side of the spectrum. The moment that you replace voluntary exchange with forced equality, you trade freedom for control. And history shows exactly where that leads. It leads to rationing. We've seen that in Soviet Russia, corruption there too, fear. Like if you read The Gulag Archipelago by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, that's one of the greatest ways of inoculating yourself about that. And also it leads to stagnation. So again, you see this, and I've noticed this too when I talk to people who kind of grew up under communist systems, etc. They're usually the ones that are least likely to want to return to those kind of systems, right? They've experienced it, not in a book, not like Lenin when Lenin was reading in France, right? Theory, it's all nice in theory, but when they actually experience it in practice and see what actually happens, right? The fear. It's only okay if you're at the very top, and you could see the ruthlessness that Lenin had, that Stalin had, that a lot of them had at the top, very, very, very top. And they were just trying to vie for that power. And everyone around them, even when you think about Stalin, like when Stalin died, the night that he died, I mean, his second in command and people around him were too fearful to even come into the room. And it's possible that he may not have died that night had people come into the room to check out and check in on him and see was he doing okay and deal with his health issues. He may not have died that night, but people were so fearful. I mean, it was the ultimate in that kind of authoritarian, despotic control. But guess what? The same is true in Pol Pot's Cambodia, in Maoist China, in the regime in North Korea, Kim Jong-il, etc. And the same in Cuba under Castro, first Fidel and then more recently then Raul, his brother, right? That fear, that stagnation, it's all nice in the movies, it's all fair, but you look at the reality, where everyone is paid equal, where the doctors, etc., they'd be working in the fields, etc., that, and everyone that escapes from Cuba, they're some of the most positive people that come out of Cuba that actually see the benefits, because you really just see the problems with the system when you've left the system, when you got out of the system. The same with Yeonmi Park when she left North Korea, right? Same thing there. Every success story you've seen started with the same first step. Downloading the Wealth Builders Toolkit. We're giving it away free to celebrate the launch of our first live cohort. So if you haven't grabbed yours yet, do it now. Click the link in the description to get your free copy while it's still available. Capitalism may not be perfect. I do not claim it's perfect, but it's the only imperfect system that lets you fix it without a revolution. Because they always talk about viva la revolution. Well, why do you need a revolution? Because you have to throw out a despotic leadership. It could be monarchy, it could be a communist system, it could be other system. You can't really vote within the system to change it because there's only one party. There's no opportunity to vote for other parties under those systems. There's no choice, right? It's controlled on you. So it's, it might be good to have a heart, but you need to have a brain to think through it. The truth is that you don't have to love capitalism, but you should at least be honest about what built your world. What built the electricity, the internet that you're watching this through, the TV, the mobile phone, etc. Every tool you use, every app you scroll, every invention you take for granted, whether it's, the wonderful things that are curing cancer, the wonderful disease, the actual insulin shots for those in diabetics, whether it's penicillin, like all of this came through capitalism, came through patent discovery, invention. The inventions in the last 300 years in particular, when capitalism really took off, that's the Industrial Revolution. That's the modern time, the 20th century. Henry Ford, the production, even diesel with the German engine, the battery, the diode, the computer. Every invention that you take for granted exists because someone took a risk, served others, and created value. That's not greed. It's like the Wall Street movie, right? Greed, for want of a better word, greed is good, right? That's the speech that the character played by Michael Douglas talks about, right? Gordon Gekko. But it's not greed. It's grace working through freedom. So if you really hate capitalism, then why not just delete your apps, because they were created through it, give up your phone and start from scratch, live on a farm. Or maybe admit that what you actually hate isn't capitalism. It's the responsibility that comes with freedom. Capitalism doesn't need fixing. We do.